Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Maslina Suhabinti Muhammad Jasni, and our group will be presenting on the pandemic COVID-19 issues and its impact toward Malaysian economy. As we all know, the new SARS-CoV-2 disease, which creates COVID-19 infection, initially appeared on the coast of Malaysia. In rejoinder of that, Malaysia has authorized a 2 weeks movement control order (MCO) where all industries and the providers deemed non-essential has been shut down. Fortunately, Malaysia has established and eligible a number of economic stimulus measures that aim at preserving the healthcare of citizens, supporting businesses and strengthening the economy. And revealing the prihatin rakyat caring for people stimulus, the Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin emphasised that no one will be left behind, where every citizen are eligible to get the stimulus provided based on the criteria given. Malaysia COVID-19 downturn is a public health problem and thus a financial recession second. From an economic perspective, somehow, lockdown has turned the economic front into an economic knockout. Due to that, economists believe that economic policy should put emphasis on strengthening community health initiatives to solve the disease outbreak, while at the same time ensuring that the well-being of the individual and the businesses. As the impact, the economy is suffering from an increasing adverse effect on employment, earning and well-being, interrupting value change and industries, and alleviating imbalance, poverty and daily struggle. Particularly, one of the most is the poor.
My name is Putri Syamita Nasani, and I will explain on the first impact of COVID-19 to the Malaysian economy, which is the supply and demand shock. A supply shock is related to economy's capacity to produce goods and services. A positive supply shock will increase the economy's capacity, while a negative supply shock will reduce the economy's capacity to produce goods and services. Malaysia is now facing negative supply shock due to the pandemic. In Malaysia, the negative supply shock is induced by the Movement Control Order (MCO). The restrictions imposed during MCO are the primary factors of the occurrence of negative supply shock in Malaysia. Production constraint occurs as many non-essential business operations are closed during the MCO. In essential business, employers are ordered to reduce the number of employees working physically at their premises to ensure strict compliance of the Standard Operating Procedure (SOP). However, it has affected the capacity of the business to operate, as there is a temporary shortage of workforce in daily operation. Besides, when the government closed Malaysian borders and forbids the entry of foreigners, foreign workers' supply in Malaysia decreases and many employers lost their workforce. On the other hand, some employers had to retrench their employees in order to reduce expenditure for their business to survive the MCO. Malaysian supply chain is also disrupted when other countries are being locked down. When their economic sector was shut down, there was a shortage in the supply of raw materials, parts, and intermediate goods globally. Next, a demand shock is related to the consumer's ability or willingness to purchase goods and services. Keynesian supply shock explains on a theory that the negative supply shock will subsequently lead to a negative demand shock or demand shortage, which will be larger than the supply shock itself. As explained earlier, many employees were retrenched during the MCO. Therefore, they have lost their source of income. Due to this, their spending on consumption are reduced in order to survive during the MCO without a steady income. This will eventually lead to a lower demand in the market, causing negative demand shock. With the retrenched employees of affected sectors losing their source of income, it is expected that other people from unaffected sectors will be able to cover for the losing demand from the affected sectors. However, fear of contagion, Malaysians have reduced their activities outside and prefer to stay at home. This has caused a shift in domestic expenditure. Less people are spending money in certain areas, such as in tourism and food and beverage sectors. Economic sectors that were initially unaffected subsequently experienced weaker domestic demand. Many sectors are experiencing negative demand shock. This is the illustration of the Keynesian supply and demand shock process. Alongside negative demand shock, there is also positive demand shock in Malaysian economy during the pandemic. Domestic expenditure has shifted from certain sectors to another sector. For example, people are spending less on tourism and food and beverage sectors, but they redirect their spending to other sectors such as e-commerce, healthcare companies, consumer manufacturing, and courier companies. For example, Pos Malaysia Berhad, the largest network courier in Malaysia, saw a 69% jump month-on-month to an average daily parcel volume of 590,000 in April 2020 compared to the usual 300,000 parcels. Other than Pos Malaysia Berhad, GD Express Carrier Berhad has also been experiencing a surge in parcel volume since April. Not only that, the world's largest manufacturer of rubber glove, Top Glove Corporation Berhad, reported a net profit of 1.29 billion ringgit for the fourth quarter ended on 31st August, compared with 74.2 million ringgit for the previous year. Amid the pandemic, these sectors are experiencing positive demand shock, and it is expected to continue for a period of time as COVID-19 shows no sign of recovering yet. To cope with the supply and demand shock, the Government of Malaysia has laid out several initiatives in an attempt to help the affected sectors and households. In Budget 2021, presented in the Parliament on 6 of November 2020, several funds are expected to be able to mitigate the supply and demand shock. For instance, the Bantuan Prihatin Rakyat (BPR). This primary monetary assistance will surely increase consumers' purchasing power. Therefore, it will increase the demands on the market. There are several other budgets laid out that may be able to overturn the supply and demand shocks in the near future. In conclusion, COVID-19 has brought about positive and negative shocks to the Malaysian economy. With the government assistance and people's effort, it is hoped that the Malaysian economy will recover as much and as soon as possible to prevent further decline in the economic sectors. That is all from me. Next, Nur Solihatun Najihah will explain on the labour market.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Solihatun Najihah binti Mak Kisti, and now I will proceed to the labour market. Labour force is the population in the working age group between 15 to 64 years old, and in the reference week, it is either who is employed or unemployed. Employed is the person that work during the reference week at least 1 hour for profit or family gain as employer or employees, and it is also include the person that not work during the reference week because of the illness, injury or other disputes but have a job. Unemployed is when a person does not work during the reference weeks but looking for a job or interested to work. Unemployed can be divided into two categories, which is inactively and actively employed. In response to COVID-19 pandemic, Malaysia have improvised the economic policy by comprised the two separate stages. The first stage is implemented during the lockdown or quarantine to safeguard the income and liquidity of business that affected also individuals. And the second stage is implemented as soon as the movement control are lifted and the outbreak of this COVID-19 pandemic shows a decreasing case comprise a hefty fiscal stimulus component. As for that, Pekeso has announced the Employment Retention Program (ERP) for those workers that forced to take unpaid leave during the pandemic. According to Department of Statistics Malaysia, employment have recorded a continued marginal increase of 0.5 month-on-month to 15.15 million persons in August 2020, then July 2020 that recorded 0.6% month-on-month. With the increasing of marginal month-on-month, the ratio for employment to population increased to 65.2%. The number of employments in service sector have been increasing because of wholesale and retail trade, accommodation and food and beverage, as well as information and communication activities. Other than that, entertainment, recreational activities and art also have been rose up compared to the previous month. Labour demand statistic based on quarterly employment survey divided the labour demand into two types: labour demand by skill and labour demand by economic activities. In quarter 2 2020, job in skill category, the rate of filled job was 98.1% and the rate for vacancy is 1.9%. As for that, 30 jobs were created during the RMCO for skill category. For semi-skill category, the rate of filled job was 98.2%, while for the rate of vacancy was 1.8%. This category has created 8,000 jobs during the pandemic. As for low skill category, the rate of filled job was 96.6%, while for vacancies was 3.4%, and for this category, 1,000 jobs created. Labour demand by economic activities such as service sector share the largest share of jobs in quarter 2 2020 at 51.8%, followed by the manufacturing sector at 26.6% and construction sector at 14.9%. The remaining percentage are in agriculture sector at 5.7% and mining and quarrying sector at 0.9%. However, in contrary, manufacturing sector has a larger share of vacancy at 55.1% and service sector at 17.3%. For the other share, agriculture sector at 16.6%, followed by construction at 10.8% and mining and quarrying at 0.2%. The unemployment rate in August 2020 remained at 4.7% due to the marginal decrease in the number of unemployed persons to 741.6 thousand persons. The unemployment rate of youth that 15 to 30 years old always higher than adults, and the overall unemployment for the outside labour force have been decreasing from 7.40 million persons in July 2020 to 7.35 million persons in August 2020. The contribution of outside labour force is due to the schooling or training as well as housework or family responsibility. Malaysian Chief Statistician Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Mahidin said that as the economic sectors continue to reopen from June 2020, Malaysia's labour force situation can be seen having an improvement on August 2020. However, due to COVID-19 pandemic, the improvement of Malaysia labour force situation may affected if the pandemic cannot be controlled. Labour force in Malaysia have been increasing but in slower rate of 0.5%, while employed persons have been decreasing by 1.3% to 15.68% and 14.88% respectively compared to second quarter 2019. Quarter-on-quarter comparison between labor force and employed persons show a decreasing by 0.7% and 2.4% respectively compared to previous quarter. The disadvantage of movement control order MCO have influencing the higher unemployment rate on the labor market. A change in the labor market has as many economic activity has been held in April, and in June the business slowly reopened with strict standard operating procedures, that is SOP. Despite the decrease of labor demand, there are still 12,000 jobs created during the quarter 2 2020 that were mostly semi-skilled category. In fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, government have implementing the 6 key steps including resolve, resilience, restart, recovery, revitalize and reform. During the recovery stage, labor force situation will improving because all the economic activities will be reopened after the unpredictable event. Government has come out with several initiatives including wage subsidy program, hiring incentive and training assistance program, and skill and upskill program. For example, for wage subsidy program, a total of 10.38 billion ringgit Malaysia have been allocated to more than 2.62 million employees and involving 320,440 employees as at 28 August 2020. Through Penjana scheme, Malaysia have introduced the Global Online Workforce Program (GLOW). This program will initiate the new career opportunities by offer the digital freelancer expertise and service globally through the online platform. This initiative and program that introduced by the government will make sure the Malaysian labour market will remain stable during this pandemic. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nur Fatin Hanisah and I will be presenting on pandemic COVID-19 issue and its impact toward SME. SME is one of the biggest contributor in Malaysia GDP as SME contribute 38.3% in 2018 Malaysia GDP and has continuously increased to 38.9% in 2019. SME not only help in terms of to boost national economy but also rely in terms of the job creation. SMEs offer about 80% to 90% of employment as SME has covered from all sizes and sectors, especially in manufacturing sectors. On 18 March 2020, Malaysia has decided to impose the first movement control order and has been extended several times in a specific district. All government and business permits are ordered to be closed to prevent the spread of the virus. The decision made by government to impose the movement control order in spite to safeguard the public health has unintentionally hurt the SME sector. The consequences of the pandemic may vary in each sector as different business offer different type of goods and services. A sum of 32,649 SMEs has been reported to shut down since the imposition of movement control order start. A survey conducted on Recommend.my showed that respondents that involved in service-based SME sector has experiencing a negative impact during the first week after the movement control order. Respondents stated that the business has experienced a fall in job requests as well as many cancellations in the employment and projects that require to meet face-to-face. According to the survey taken, there are 3 areas of business that affected the most during the first week of implementation of movement control order. Firstly is the sale. Sale is one of the most important keys for a business to have a good cash flow. By having a good performance in sale will help a business to have a continuous financial sources for the future. But because of the movement control order, demand on the non-necessary goods and services is decreased, especially services that involve in face-to-face, for example, spa, gym and more. However, a good performance in sale will be useless if the business does not have a proper cash flow management in the business. In Malaysia, even though before the outbreak occurred, many SMEs still struggle in cash flow even if the business have a good performance in sales. The second is cash flow. Cash flow management is very important in business practice to measure any potential cash gap and clearly see the inflow and outflow of the cash in a business. Cash flow management also helps SMEs to maintain an optimal cash balance and also help business to receive financial assistance from bank. Many SMEs are depending on the bank financing and unable to have another source of fund or saving to encounter any emergency situation. In worst case, there are also many SMEs that are unable to receive financial assistance from bank, which make the business, especially micro SMEs, is 100% depending on the profit of the business. Despite do not have any sales, the SMEs are still obligated to pay for the fixed costs and financial expenses such as employees' wage, electricity, water bills, taxes and more. Next, by having zero cash flow, the risk of bankruptcy among SME is high. Many retailers need to pay rental for the shop lots or shopping malls, loan, if any, and other operation costs that cost a lot and higher than the profit received. This becomes worrisome for government, entrepreneur, as well as the employee because business failure not only lead to bankruptcy but also unemployment. Business failure rate all over the world are estimated to increase during COVID-19 from 9.4%, which not related with COVID-19 bankruptcy, to 18.2% when COVID-19 outbreak. To avoid tremendous bankruptcy happen, Malaysia government has launched the Prihatin Rakyat Economic Stimulus Package 2020 and additional Prihatin SME Economic Stimulus Package with the aim to assist SMEs to continue the business operation and domestic investment as well as easing the financial burden. Besides sales, cash flow and bankruptcy, SMEs also having trouble in supply chain. Many retailers and manufacturers in Malaysia are dependent on global supply, as many countries has closed their border and implement a strict restriction on domestic travel. Many supplies of goods has been held at the distribution center of the country and expected delays in processing, transportation and delivering of incoming and outgoing international shipping. In addition, many countries, including Malaysia, has imposed lockdown and restriction of movement, which has resulted many ports to take precautious action by closing the port or reducing the workers. This has caused disruption in supply chain of the business, as many retailers and manufacturers are failed to pick up their cargo because the warehouse did not receive the cargo or has been closed. Moreover, local SMEs manufacturers do not have any choice but to slow down the production due to the shortage of raw materials, and other SMEs face a shortage of materials and product in the business inventory. In a nutshell, the effect of COVID-19 toward SME sector in Malaysia may differ because of the various field of the business as well as the difference in the nature of business. For example, SMEs that provide necessary goods and services such as groceries and wet market, and also those who is involved in cloud kitchen and pharmacies are the least affected sector during COVID-19. There are many stimulus packages offered by government during the movement control order towards SMEs. All SMEs must use the opportunities wisely and strategically in order to keep the business in the future. Even though SMEs economy are predicted to expand 3.5% on 2021, all SME must take precautious action in managing and planning the business as the pandemic do not yet come into an end. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Nur Izzah binti Anwar. So, I will continue these presentations on the impact of COVID-19 towards the tourism industry. Tourism is the largest contributor to Malaysian gross domestic product (GDP) after the manufacturing and commodity sectors. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has given the worst effect of Malaysia's economy, and one of it is the tourism and travel sector. According to Minister of Tourism, Art and Culture, Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, the travel and tourism is the hardest sector that have affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and she said that it will take a long period of time to recover. Malaysia has suffered losses in this sector for the first half of 2020, around 45 billion ringgit Malaysia due to the pandemic. According to Tourism Malaysia, the imposed bans on international travel by countries due to the pandemic is the cause for this severe decline in travel number. Malaysian government said that the GDP of the country will decline by 0.8% to 1.2%, which is from RM10.8 billion to RM17.3 billion. Next, I will move to the first impact of the tourism industry, which is on the Tourism Malaysia. Tourism Malaysia, firstly, are under the Tourist Development Corporation of Malaysia, TDC, that was established on 10 August 1972 as an agency under the former Ministry of Trade and Industry by an Act of Parliament. After the Ministry of Culture, Art and Tourism were introduced on 20 May 1987, TDC was moved to this new ministry and it became the Malaysia Tourist Promotion Board (MTPD) through the Malaysia Tourism Promotion Board Act 1992. So nowadays, it was called as Tourism Malaysia, and it focuses in promoting Malaysia domestically and internationally. So generally, Visit Malaysia 2020 was launched on 31 December 2019 and it targets about 30 million visitors arrival and RM100 billion as for its revenue. The Ministry of Tourism, Art and Culture, Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, have decided to take the actions on the cancellations to Visit Malaysia campaign VM 2020 due to the movement control order. She also stated that it will be a freeze on all of the license renewal of travel operating business and travel, over-the-counter and online services for new application, tourism training institute and registration of rated tourist accommodation premises, and lastly, the tourist guide. So, we can see that actually the decision made by the Ministry of Tourism, Art and Culture is the one of the prevention ways of the spreadness of the virus, and it was the best decisions as Malaysia tourism is the largest sector that has been affected due to the pandemic. So, Malaysia tourism has the largest impact due to COVID-19 pandemic since the Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign VM 2020 need to be cancelled. Next, the second tourism industry that has an impact due to the COVID-19 pandemic is the hotel industry. According to Malaysian Association of Hotel MAH 2020, the movement control order MCO on 18 March 2020 had allowed only certain services to be operated, and it does not include the hotel operation. So, because of this statement made by the government, the hotel in Malaysia have recorded at least 170,000 room cancellation due to the pandemic, and it was estimated losses around RM 70 million. So, there are three states that have the largest booking cancellation, which is Kuala Lumpur, Sabah, and Selangor. As for the Kuala Lumpur, it was around 61,589 booking cancellation, and it has resulted in RM 24.91 million. As for the second largest booking cancellation, Sabah, they experienced about 33,769 booking cancellation, with the losses being RM 11.79 million. And the last one is Selangor, with resulted losses of RM 9.05 million of hotel booking cancellation in March 2020. The number of hotel employees being laid off are 2,041 people due to the losses and economic pressure, and there are about 9,773 hotel employees that have been given unpaid leave, and the another 5,054 took pay cut at the end of March 2020. After the tourism Malaysia and hotel industry that was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the aviation industry also experienced the largest losses due to this pandemic. The aviation industry actually is under the Malaysian Aviation Commission (MEFCOM) that have been established on 1 March 2016 under the Malaysian Aviation Commission Act 2015. The Ministry of Transportation Malaysia state that the Malaysian aviation industry might lose RM 13 billion on 2020 as the air travel is affected with COVID-19 pandemic and international travel restrictions. So, generally, Malaysia have three major airlines which are known as Malaysian Airline, AirAsia, and Malindo Air. 13 billion ringgit Malaysia that have been stated by the Ministry of Transportation actually include about 10.9 billion ringgit Malaysia losses from these three major airlines. So, those three major airlines have stated that they have cancelled in total about 169,728 flights that have affected 4.316 million passengers during the movement control order. In the total of 4.316 million passengers, there are some passengers which is 628,000 passengers that were given the total refund that worth RM 399 million. As for the Malaysian airline passengers, over 190,000 passengers were given a total refund of RM 294 million. And as for the AirAsia passengers, there are around 437 passengers that were given refund that amounting to RM 105 million. These three Malaysia major airline, which is AirAsia, Malindo Air, and Malaysia Airline, have given the employees a pay cut that range from 10% to 100% and unpaid leave depending on their monthly salary range and their position in the company. Thus, the aviation industry has really been worst affected by the COVID-19 Movement Control Order MCO and the ban of international travel due to the pandemic. That's all from me. Thank you.
In conclusion, based on the issue and impact that the Malaysian economy has during the COVID-19 pandemic, is the capacity of the Malaysian government in decentralized direction. This is what the government has put in place. The state government in itself adds an initiative to people to reduce the burden they charge. Although this initiative is based on the government financial aid, this is an integrationary strategy to stabilize the Malaysian economy. As such, therefore, it is a strategy between the governments to stabilize the Malaysian economy. This is because there has been a lot of good impact not only on the worker and the existing people, but also a lot of positive impact on the current economic change. Although there is still an adverse effect in terms of effort to stabilize the affected economy at this time, the government effort in giving initiative to the affected citizen have given a ray for the people to begin and appreciate the assistance given by starting the career of the people now affected by starting online business, or in other words, is to use the e-commerce concept. As the situation in C is since nowadays, the business is gaining attention, especially during this MCO, and it is impossible to dominate the future employment sector. At the same time, the government needs to make additional fiscal expenses to strengthen the economy and social protection in Malaysia. This is because many of the people affected by these challenging situations, such as missing job, missing investor, and increasingly worrying health level are now. Even education factors should also be taken into account, thus the government should make an improvement so that all problems that plague our country can be redirected and resolved. This is because the recovery of the Malaysian economy depends heavily on the government efforts and the success of so that economy disruption can be avoided. Besides that, Malaysia need to stop drama and crisis in the politician. This is because since the onset of the COVID-19 case in our country, political matters have taken a lot over and have become one of the causes of the increasing rise in COVID cases. Hence, this political group should stop the game of grabbing power and work together to combat COVID case from getting higher. In fact, the government should immediately address issues such as the spread of fake news that make citizens panic. This is because the matter is able to turn the Malaysian economy into a decline due to the lack of existing resources or people make a large amount of panic purchase at a time.